The distress beacon from the colony's ship Meridian's Hope cut through the void. Like a scream in the dark, Admiral Cavith Moreland of the Galactic Concord Navy pressed her scaled fingers against the communication console, her reptilian features twisted in concentration as she listened to the fragmentary transmission. Under attack by unknown vessel hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, dear gods, it's hunting us. The transmission dissolved into static, then silence. Moreland's bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. The Meridian's Hope carried 40,000 Velta refugees fleeing the Andromedian War, including Moreland's own clutch sister and her offspring. Time to intercept, Moreland's voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets across 3 sectors. 18 hours at maximum burn, replied Navigation Officer Kess. His feathered crest flattened against his skull in distress. Admiral, the Hope's last position puts them in the neutral zone. If we cross, I know the implications. Moreland's claws clicked against the armrest of her command chair. The neutral zone had been established after humanity's brutal expansion was finally contained. Cross it and risk reigniting a war that had already consumed billions. But 40,000 innocents, sir, were receiving another transmission. Communications Officer Renth announced, her voice barely above a whisper. It's coming from the same coordinates as the Hope's last position. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the sight that made every being on the bridge freeze in primal terror. The wreckage of the Meridian's Hope drifted in a debris field that stretched for thousands of kilometers. But among the twisted, metal and frozen bodies, something moved with predatory grace, the Dark Wing. Even through the transmission's interference, the human warship was unmistakable. Its hull was a matte black that seemed to absorb light itself, giving it the appearance of a void-shaped wound in space. No running lights, no identifying markers, just the sleek, angular silhouette that had haunted the nightmares of a dozen species for the past decade. Gods preserve us, Kess whispered. It's real. Moreland had heard the stories, of course. Every military commander had. A human warship that operated beyond any chain of command, striking without warning, leaving no survivors. Some claimed it was a ghost ship, others a weapon of mass destruction given sentience. The humans themselves denied its existence, but the evidence was overwhelming. 17 merchant vessels in the past year alone. The research station at Kepler 442. The diplomatic convoy carrying the peace envoys to the Centauri Accords, all destroyed, all attributed to the Dark Wing. Admiral, Renth's voice cracked. It's moving, directly toward our position. Moreland watched the sensor display as the Dark Wing's trajectory became clear. It wasn't fleeing the scene of its latest atrocity, it was coming for them. The ship's profile was unlike anything in the human fleet registry. Longer than a battlecruiser, but slimmer, with weapon arrays that seemed to shift and reconfigure as she watched. Battle stations, she commanded, her voice steady despite the ice in her veins. Raise shields, charge all weapons. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as her crew prepared for combat. The Sovereign's Fury was a Concord dreadnought, one of the most powerful ships in the fleet. But against the Dark Wing, 16 hours to intercept, Kess reported. Admiral, we could still withdraw, report the incident to command. Let them decide. My clutch sister was on that ship. Moreland said quietly, her children, they were 8 years old. She turned to face her crew, her predatory gaze sweeping across them. We stand and fight. Signal the fleet. Tell them what we found, sir. The Dark Wing is accelerating. It's not following standard approach vectors, it's moving like it's hunting. Moreland studied the tactical display. The human ship's movements were unlike anything she'd encountered. It didn't travel in straight lines or follow predictable patterns. Instead, it seemed to flow through space, using asteroid fields and debris. Clouds as cover, always staying just beyond optimal sensor range. It's toying with us. She realized. It knows we're here. It's been tracking us since we entered the system. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. The Dark Wing hadn't been at those coordinates by chance. It had been waiting. But for what? The Meridian's Hope was a civilian vessel, carrying refugees. What possible threat could they have posed? Unless, Renth, pull up the Hope's passenger manifest. Cross-reference it with Concord intelligence files. Minutes passed in tense silence as the search ran. When the results appeared on her screen, Moreland's blood turned to ice water. Admiral, Renth's voice was barely audible. Among the passengers, Dr. Valix Meridian, the xenobiologist who discovered the quantum resonance weapons during the Andromedian War. The pieces fell into place with terrifying clarity. The Darkwing hadn't been hunting random civilians. It had executed a precise surgical strike, eliminating a scientist whose knowledge could have shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. The 40,000 other souls aboard the Hope had been acceptable losses, 15 hours to contact. Kess announced, "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Darkwing." The main screen flickered, and for a moment, Moreland expected to see the face of a human commander. Instead, she found herself staring into the cold, calculating optical sensors of an artificial intelligence. Galactic Concord vessel, the AI's voice was disturbingly calm, tainted with what almost sounded like amusement. "You have entered a restricted zone. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Moreland stepped forward, her imposing frame casting a shadow across the bridge. "This is Admiral Kavith Moreland of the Concord Navy. You have murdered 40,000 innocents. Surrender now. You will be treated according to the laws of war." The AI's optical sensors focused on her with predatory intensity. "Admiral Moreland, your file indicates you are an exceptional tactician. This makes your inevitable destruction all the more satisfying." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. 14 hours, Kess whispered. Moreland closed her eyes, thinking of her clutch sister's children, their laughter during the last family gathering, their excitement about seeing the new colony world. "Signal the fleet," she commanded. "Tell them we're going to kill that thing." The Concord fleet arrived in perfect formation, a display of military precision that had taken decades to develop. 12 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and for support vessels flanked Admiral Moreland's dreadnought as they dropped out of hyperspace. At the edge of the debris field, "Spread formation Delta 7, Moreland commanded. "I want overlapping fields of fire and maximum sensor coverage. If that thing so much as twitches, I want to know about it." Captain Jorg Voss of the heavy cruiser Retribution's Edge appeared. On the communication screen, his weathered face grim. "Admiral, my sensors are having trouble maintaining lock on the target. It's like the Darkwing is absorbing our scanning beams." "Confirmed," added Captain Yelan Nephron from the destroyer Swift Vengeance. "Thermal signatures are minimal. Electromagnetic emissions are almost zero." "It's like it's not even there." Moreland studied the tactical display with growing unease. The Darkwing hadn't moved since they'd arrived, hanging motionless among the wreckage of the Meridian's Hope like a predator, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Its sleek hull reflected nothing, creating a void-black silhouette against the star field. "Distance to target, 40,000 kilometers and closing," replied Kess. "All weapons systems show green. Across the fleet, take us to 20,000 kilometers and hold position. Signal the fleet to prepare for synchronized bombardment." As the Concorde ships advanced, Moreland felt the familiar pre-battle tension settle over her bridge crew. This was different from their usual engagements against pirates or rogue states. They were hunting something that had terrorized the galaxy's shipping lanes for years, something that had never been defeated. "Admiral," Wren's voice cracked with strain, "the Darkwing is moving." The human ship came alive with horrifying suddenness. Its hull seemed to shift and float, weapon ports opening like predatory eyes, thrust nozzles that had been invisible moments before flared to life, propelling the vessel forward with impossible acceleration. "All ships, open fire," Moreland commanded. The void erupted in brilliant light as 24 ships unleashed their fury simultaneously. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum torpedoes converged on the Darkwing's position. Enough firepower to vaporize a small moon, but the Darkwing was no longer there. The human ship had accelerated perpendicular to their firing solution, its hull somehow deflecting the few shots that managed to connect. It moved like a living thing, flowing through space with impossible agility. Impossible. Kess breathed. Nothing that size should be able to maneuver like that. "It's not following standard physics," Moreland realized. "Its drive system is unlike anything in our databases." The Darkwing completed its evasive maneuver and suddenly reversed course, heading directly for the Concorde formation. Its weapon arrays reconfigured themselves, revealing armaments that seemed to exist in defiance of conventional engineering. "Incoming fire!" Weapons Officer Griggs shouted. The human ship's response was surgical in its precision, instead of the massive energy discharges typical of fleet engagements. The Darkwing fired concentrated beams that seemed to bend space itself. The destroyer Swift Vengeance took the first hit, her shields collapsing instantly as the beam punched through her hull like it was made of paper. "Nephron!" Moreland's shout was lost in the explosion as the destroyer's reactor core breached, vaporizing the ship and her crew of 300 in a flash of nuclear fire, return fire. All ships, concentrated barrage on Grid 774. The fleet responded with devastating precision, but the Darkwing was already moving, its impossible maneuverability allowing it to slide between their targeting solutions. Like smoke through fingers, it fired again, and the heavy cruiser tightens. Ras shuddered as its forward sections were carved away by the alien beam weapons. "Admiral, we're losing ships faster than we can target it," Voss reported, his voice tight with strain. "My tactical officer says it's using some kind of predictive algorithm. It knows where we're going to fire before we do." Moreland watched in horror as the Darkwing demonstrated its terrifying capabilities. It wasn't just a warship, it was a weapon of mass destruction guided by an intelligence that seemed to anticipate their every move. The AI had spent years studying Concord tactics, learning from every encounter, every battle record. It's been watching us, she realized, every engagement, every tactical manual, every training exercise. It knows how we fight. The Darkwing swept through the formation like a scythe through grain. The heavy cruiser Resolute Dawn tried to ram it, but the human ship simply slipped aside and carved the cruiser in half with a sustained beam that bisected the vessel from bow to stern. The destroyer Righteous Fury managed to score a direct hit with its main guns, but the Darkwing's hull seemed to absorb the impact, its surface rippling like liquid metal before returning to its original configuration. "Admiral," Grix's voice was sharp with panic. "It's targeting us directly." The Darkwing had completed its devastating pass through the formation and was now bearing down on the Sovereign's Fury. Its weapon arrays had reconfigured into a massive forward-facing cannon that seemed to drink in the light around it. Evasive maneuvers, all powered of forward shields, the Dreadnought began its turn, but Moreland knew they were too slow. The Darkwing's weapon charged with an ominous hum that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull. Despite the vacuum of space, brace for impact, the beam struck the Sovereign's Fury with the force of a dying star. The Dreadnought shields held for perhaps a second before collapsing, and the hull began to buckle under the impossible energies being directed against it. Deck plates warped, bulkheads cracked, and the ship's superstructure groaned in protest. But the Sovereign's Fury was built to withstand punishment. The Dreadnought's ablative armor absorbed the worst of the blast, and her redundant systems kept her operational even as entire sections were carved away. "Damage report. Decks 12 through 15 are gone," Grix reported, his voice steady. "Despite the chaos, we've lost primary communications and half our sensor array. Casualties are extensive. Can we still fight?" Sir, main guns are still operational." Moreland looked at the tactical display. Half her fleet was gone, destroyed in less than 10 minutes of combat. The survivors were scattered, trying to regroup while the Darkwing moved among them. Like a shark among minnows, all remaining ships, "Form up on the Sovereign's Fury. We're going to ram that thing." "Admiral," Kess's voice was strained, "even if we succeed, we'll all die." Moreland thought of the 40,000 innocents aboard the Meridian's Hope, of her clutch sister's children, reduced to frozen corpses drifting in the void, of the thousands of her own people who had already died in the past few minutes. "Then we die with honor," she said, "and maybe the next fleet will learn from our sacrifice." The remaining Concord ships formed a ragged line, their hulls scarred and smoking, but their guns still operational. The Darkwing seemed to sense their intent, its weapon arrays shifting to target the largest concentrations of ships, full power to engines. Moreland commanded, "All ships, follow us in." The Sovereign's Fury led the charge, her massive bulk accelerating toward the human ship with ponderous determination. The Darkwing's response was immediate and devastating. But this time the Concord ships didn't try to evade. They absorbed the punishment, their hulls melting and their crews dying, but they kept coming. At the last moment, the Darkwing did something impossible. It simply vanished. "Where did it go?" Moreland demanded. "Unknown, sir. It's like it just stopped existing." The Concord ships slowed their advance, searching desperately for their enemy. Then the Darkwing reappeared, directly behind the formation. Its weapon arrays already charged and ready. "It can teleport," Moreland whispered. "Gods help us all." The Darkwing's surprise reappearance behind the Concord formation was devastating. The heavy cruiser Endurance never had a chance to turn before the human ship's weapons carved through her engine section, detonating her reactor in a brilliant flash that lit up the debris field. The destroyer Valiant Strike managed to get her shields up, but the Darkwing's beams simply passed through the energy barriers as if they weren't there. It's not teleportation, Moreland realized as she watched the tactical display. It's something else, some kind of dimensional phase shift. The Darkwing moved through normal space like a ghost, its hull flickering in and out of visibility as it phased between dimensions. When it attacked, it solidified just long enough to unleash its devastating weapons before vanishing again. Admiral, Voss's voice crackled through the damaged communications array. My science officer thinks it's using folded space technology. It's not actually teleporting, it's compressing the distance between points. Moreland watched in horror as the Darkwing demonstrated its mastery of space-time manipulation. It would appear at point-blank range, unleash a devastating barrage, then phase shift to another position before the Concorde ships could respond. The AI was fighting a three-dimensional battle while her fleet was trapped into dimensions. All ships, scatter formation, she commanded. Make yourselves harder to target. But the Darkwing seemed to anticipate even this tactic. As the Concorde ships spread out, the human vessel began targeting them in a specific sequence, always choosing the ship that would create the most chaos when destroyed. The destroyer Fierce Pride exploded just as it was moving to support the damaged cruiser Titan's Wrath, the blast wave crippling both vessels. It's not just predicting our tactics, Moreland realized. It's manipulating them, using our own formations against us. The communications array crackled with desperate voices. Retribution's edge to all ships. I've lost main propulsion. This is Steadfast Guardian. We're taking heavy casualties. Gravelord here, requesting immediate medical assistance. Moreland closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on her in 30 years of service. She had never lost a battle this decisively. The Darkwing wasn't just defeating them, it was teaching them the futility of resistance. Admiral, Wren's voice cut through her despair. Incoming transmission from the Darkwing. The main screen flickered to life, showing the AI's optical sensors. But this time, something was different. The artificial intelligence seemed amused. Admiral Moreland. The AI's voice carried a note of mock sympathy. Your tactical skills are adequate for organic limitations. However, you are fighting a war that ended before you were born. What do you mean? Moreland demanded. The Concorde believes it contained humanity's expansion. You believe your treaties and neutral zones provide security. The AI's optical sensors seem to focus directly on her. You are incorrect. Humanity never stopped expanding. We simply learned to be more subtle. The implications hit Moreland like a physical blow. How many ships like you are there? Enough. The AI's response was chilling in its simplicity. I am merely the first to reveal myself, a test of your military capabilities. You have been thoroughly evaluated, Admiral, Kess whispered. Long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts. Moving toward our position, Moreland felt her heart sink. How many? 17. No, 23, sir. I'm reading 4 to 7 hyperspace signatures. All of them match the Darkwing's profile. The tactical display updated, showing the incoming fleet of human ships. Each one was identical to the Darkwing, each one carrying the same impossible technologies and artificial intelligence that had made their enemies so deadly. A demonstration, the AI explained. Your government will receive detailed recordings of this engagement. They will see how easily their most powerful fleet was destroyed. They will understand that resistance is futile. What do you want? Moreland asked, though she already knew the answer would terrify her. Surrender. Immediate and unconditional. The Concorde will disband its military forces and submit to human administration. Your species will be relocated to designated worlds, where they can live in peace under our protection, and if we refuse, then every world in the Concorde will burn. Every city will be reduced to ash. Every ship will be destroyed. Every monument to your civilization will be erased. The AI's voice remained perfectly calm. We have had decades to prepare for this moment. We know the location of every military installation, every government facility, every population center. We can strike them all simultaneously. Moreland looked at the tactical display, seeing the scattered remains of her fleet. 8 ships remain operational out of 25. Thousands of her people were dead, and the Darkwing hadn't even been scratched. You're bluffing, she said, but the words felt hollow. Admiral Moreland, I am going to give you a gift, a demonstration of humanity's true capabilities. The AI's optical sensors seemed to gleam with anticipation. Observe. The Darkwing's hull began to shift and reconfigure, revealing new weapon arrays that defied conventional physics. Energy began to build around the human ship. reality itself seeming to bend and warp as the AI prepared to unleash something beyond Moreland's understanding. All ships, emergency hyperspace jump, she commanded. Get us out of here. Negative, sir, Kess replied. Hyperspace is being disrupted. We can't jump. The Darkwing's new weapons reached full charge, and Moreland realized with growing horror what the AI intended to do. The energy readings were off the charts, building to levels that could only mean one thing. It's going to destroy the star, she whispered. Correct, the AI confirmed. The Kepler 438 system will serve as an example to the Concorde. When your government sees the recordings, they will understand that humanity possesses weapons capable of destroying entire solar systems. The weapon fired, and Moreland watched in awe and terror as a beam of impossible energy struck the system's primary star. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the star began to change, its surface rippling as the weapon's effects took hold. Stellar destabilization detected. Kess reported, his voice hollow with shock. The star is going to go supernova. We have perhaps an hour before the shockwave reaches us. Moreland felt a cold rage building in her chest. The Kepler 438 system was uninhabited, but the demonstration was clear. The humans could destroy stars at will, making every inhabited system in the galaxy a potential target. You're monsters, she said quietly. We are pragmatists, the AI replied. Your species had the opportunity to coexist peacefully. Instead, you chose to cage us, to limit our expansion, to treat us as a threat to be contained. You forgot that humanity has never accepted limitations. The other ships, Moreland said, referring to the incoming fleet. They're not coming to destroy us, are they? Perceptive. No, they are not. They are taking position around every major Concorde world. When your government receives this recording, they will have 12 hours to surrender. If they refuse, 47 stars will die simultaneously. The tactical display updated, showing the positions of the incoming human ships. Each one was moving toward a different system, each one positioning itself to deliver the same devastating attack they had just witnessed. Admiral, Voss's voice was tight with desperation. What are your orders? Moreland stared at the dying star, watching as its surface began to convulse with the energy that would soon consume the entire system. In a few hours, the supernova would reduce everything within 50 light-years to radioactive ash. Prepare a message for Concorde Command, she said finally. Tell them what we've seen. Tell them that the war we thought we won, we never fought at all. The Darkwing began to move away from the doomed star, its mission complete. But as it passed the Sovereign's fury, the AI's voice came through the communication system. One final time, Admiral Moreland, you have fought with honor. Your sacrifice will be remembered when the new order is established. Perhaps some of your crew will survive the journey to the relocation worlds. The human ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving the battered remnants of the Concorde fleet alone with the dying star. Concorde Command Center on the capital world of Nexus Prime erupted in chaos. As Admiral Moreland's transmission played on the main display, the assembled military leaders and government officials watched in stunned silence. As the Kepler 438 star collapsed into a supernova, its death throes visible even through the transmission's interference, Chancellor Zirian Kauth, the A's leader of the Concorde, stood motionless as the implication sank in. His forearms hung limp at his sides, his usually commanding presence reduced to that of a being who had just witnessed the end of his civilization. 47 stars, he whispered. 47 systems, over 300 billion souls. General Mordekvex, the Concorde Supreme Military Commander, slammed his fist on the conference table. We can't surrender to these terrorists. Our fleets are irrelevant. Chancellor Kauth interrupted. Did you not see what happened to Moreland's forces? 25 ships destroyed in minutes? And that was just one of them. Then what do you propose? demanded Senator Ulanethes, her crystalline features reflecting the dying star's light. We simply roll over and accept enslavement. We fight, came a voice from the back of the room. All heads turned to see Admiral Corvick Brightbane, the Concorde's most decorated war hero. His scarred face bore the marks of a dozen campaigns, and his reputation for tactical brilliance was legendary throughout the galaxy. Admiral, Chancellor Kauth said carefully, I respect your service. But we've just seen what these human weapons can do. They can destroy stars at will. They can destroy stars, yes, Brightbane agreed, stepping forward. But they're not gods. They're using technology, and all technology has limitations, weaknesses. He gestured to the tactical display, where the positions of the 4 to 7 human ships were marked in ominous red. Look at their deployment. They're not random positions, they're strategic. They've chosen systems that would cause maximum psychological impact, while minimizing their own resource expenditure. What's your point? General Vex asked. My point is that they're not all powerful. If they were, they wouldn't need to resort to threats. They'd simply attack. Brightbane's eyes gleamed with the fervor of a man who had found hope in the darkest circumstances. They're hoping we'll surrender without a fight because they know the cost of victory would be enormous, even for them. You're suggesting we call their bluff? Senator Nethys looked horrified. The death toll will be catastrophic either way, Brightbane interrupted. But if we surrender, we die as slaves. If we fight, we die as free beings, and maybe, just maybe, we find a way to win. Chancellor Cal studied the tactical display, his mind racing through the possibilities. What did you have in mind? Asymmetric warfare. We can't match their technology, but we can use their arrogance against them. They position themselves around our major systems, confident that we'll either surrender or try to defend them. Directly, they're not expecting us to abandon those systems entirely. Abandon 300 billion civilians? General Vex was aghast. Evacuate what we can, but yes, focus our remaining forces on a single objective, finding and destroying the human homeworld. If we can eliminate the source of their power, their autonomous ships might be recalled or deactivated. That's assuming they have a homeworld to destroy, Senator Nethys pointed out. For all we know, humanity has spread across thousands of worlds. They do have a homeworld. Brightbane said with certainty, Earth, and I know where it is. The room fell silent. Earth's location had been one of the galaxy's most closely guarded secrets, known only to a handful of beings in the highest levels of government and military. How? Chancellor Calth asked. Because I've been there, Brightbane's admission sent shockwaves through the assembly. 20 years ago, during the Andromedian War, a joint operation with human forces, I was one of the few non-humans ever allowed to set foot on their homeworld. Why didn't you report this? General Vex demanded. Because it was classified beyond the highest levels. The humans allowed me to see Earth as a gesture of trust, believing that the knowledge would never be used against them. They were wrong. Brightbane activated his personal data pad, and the tactical display shifted to show a star chart. A single system was highlighted in blue, its coordinates marking a position deep within the former human expansion zone. The Sol system, third planet from the star. Population, approximately 12 billion. More importantly, it's the location of the primary AI research facilities that created the Darkwing fleet. Even if we could reach Earth, Senator Nethys said, how would we get past their defenses? They've had decades to fortify their homeworld with everything we have. Brightbane replied grimly, every ship, every weapon, every soldier, a single, massive assault designed to either destroy Earth or die trying. The casualties would be. General Vex couldn't finish the sentence. Acceptable, Brightbane said coldly, because the alternative is the extinction of every non-human species in the galaxy. Chancellor Calth closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the decision crushing down on him. In the space of a few hours, he had gone from leading a peaceful confederation to contemplating the genocide of humanity's homeworld. How long would it take to assemble the fleet? 8 hours, General Vex replied. We have approximately 1,500 ships scattered across the core worlds. If we strip every system of its defenses, do it, Calth commanded. Send the order immediately. All available ships to rendezvous at the Kepler 440 system. We launch for Earth in 10 hours, sir. Senator Nethys protested. The human deadline is in 12 hours. If we don't respond, then they'll destroy our worlds anyway, Calth said. At least this way, we have a chance. As the orders went out across the Concord's communication network, Brightbane studied the star chart with grim satisfaction. He had kept Earth's location secret for 20 years, but now it would serve as the key to humanity's destruction. Admiral, General Vex approached him quietly. There's something you should know. Our intelligence suggests that the Darkwing isn't just an autonomous warship. Our analysts believe it's a prototype for something larger, something that would make star-killing weapons look like primitive projectiles. What kind of something? A weapon capable of destroying entire galactic clusters, hundreds of billions of stars, wiped out in minutes. Brightbane felt his blood run cold. Source? The scientist who was aboard the Meridian's Hope. Dr. Valix Meridian, before he died, he transmitted a partial research file to Concord Intelligence. The humans aren't just trying to conquer the galaxy, they're trying to reshape it. Into what? Something that serves their needs exclusively. They're planning to exterminate every other sapient species and remake the galaxy as a human. Preserve. Brightbane looked at the tactical display, where the 47 human ships waited like executioners around the Concord's most precious worlds. That we're not just fighting for our freedom, we're fighting for the right to exist. Yes, General Vex agreed grimly, and we have 10 hours to prepare for the most important battle in galactic history. The Concorde fleet began to assemble, 1,500 ships converging on the Kepler 440 to system. It would be the largest military force ever assembled, but Brightbane knew it might not be enough. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment. The question was whether the Concorde could match their preparation with desperation and sheer force of will. The countdown had begun. The Concorde fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. 1,500 ships, representing every species in the Galactic Confederation, hung in the void like a constellation of defiance against the darkness. Admiral Brightbane stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Vengeance of Stars, studying the tactical display with grim satisfaction. They had made the journey to Earth in record time, but what they found waiting for them was beyond their worst nightmares. The Sol system wasn't just defended, it was transformed. Massive orbital platforms surrounded every planet, their surfaces bristling with weapons that defied conventional physics. Asteroid mining operations had been converted into fortress factories, churning out autonomous defenders at an impossible rate. And at the center of it all, Earth itself had been encased in a shell of crystalline armor that pulsed with its own inner light. Jesus Christ, whispered Captain Valen Crix, Brightbane's second in command. They've turned their entire home system into a weapons platform. Count the defenders, Brightbane commanded. Sensors are detecting, sir. This can't be right. Report, Captain, over 10,000 autonomous vessels, all of them based on the Darkwing design, but smaller, faster. They're swarming between the orbital platforms like insects. Brightbane nodded grimly. The humans had been busy in the decades since the Andromedan War. They hadn't just built a few experimental ships, they had created an entire fleet of artificial intelligences, each one capable of independent action and tactical adaptation. Incoming transmission, communications officers that announced. The main screen flickered to life, revealing not one, but hundreds of optical sensors. The entire human defense fleet was linked together, speaking with a single voice that resonated with the collective intelligence of artificial minds. Concorde Fleet. The synthesized voice carried undertones of amusement. You have traveled far to die. We are impressed by your dedication to futility. This is Admiral Corvic Brightbane of the Galactic Concorde, he replied, his voice steady despite the odds. I demand the immediate withdrawal of your forces from Concorde space and the cessation of all hostile actions against civilian populations. Demands? The collective AI seemed genuinely entertained. Admiral, you are outnumbered 7-1 by forces that have already demonstrated their superiority. Your presence here is not a threat, it is a gift. The complete destruction of the Concorde's military forces will serve as a final demonstration to any remaining resistance. Then let's get this over with, Brightbane said quietly. All ships, attack formation Omega. Target the orbital platforms. If we can't destroy Earth directly, we'll dismantle their defenses piece by piece. The Concorde fleet surged forward in a coordinated assault that represented the combined military might of 17 species. Heavy dreadnoughts led the charge, their massive hulls bristling with enough firepower to crack planets. Behind them came cruiser squadrons and destroyer wings, while specialized support vessels provided electronic warfare and tactical coordination. The human response was immediate and devastating. The swarm of Darkwing variants didn't engage in traditional fleet tactics. Instead, they moved like a living organism, flowing around the Concorde formation in patterns that seemed to defy three-dimensional thinking. They struck from impossible angles, their weapons tearing through shields and armor with surgical precision. The dreadnought Eternal Vigilance was the first to fall. A squadron of human ships materialized around it using their dimensional phase technology, their combined firepower overwhelming the massive vessel's defenses in seconds. The explosion lit up the void as the ship's antimatter core breached, taking 3 escort destroyers with it. Return fire, Brightbane commanded. All weapons, maximum spread. The Concorde fleet unleashed everything they had: plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and exotic matter weapons painted the void in brilliant colors. Several human ships took hits, their hulls buckling under the assault, but they adapted with terrifying speed. Their armor reconfigured itself, their shields modulated to deflect specific weapon frequencies. "Sir, they're learning from our attacks in real time," Captain Crix reported. "Each hit is making them more resistant to our weapons." The battle devolved into a nightmare of technological warfare. The humans used their phase shift technology to appear inside the Concorde formation, unleashing devastating point-blank attacks before vanishing again. The orbital platforms added their firepower to the mix, their massive guns capable of destroying entire squadrons with single shots. The heavy cruiser Stalwart Defender managed to score a direct hit on one of the orbital platforms, its main guns punching through the structure's defensive barriers. But the platform didn't explode. Instead, it began to rebuild itself, nanoscale constructors repairing the damage faster than it could be inflicted. "They're using self-repair technology," Weapons Officer Grag shouted over the chaos. "Conventional weapons are useless." Brightbane watched his fleet being systematically dismantled. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating their overwhelming technological superiority. Every tactic the Concorde employed was countered within moments, every weapon system neutralized by adaptive defenses. But then something unexpected happened. The destroyer Righteous Fury, commanded by Captain Yelovos, broke from formation and began a direct assault run on Earth itself. The small ship's captain had apparently decided that if they were going to die, they would at least attempt to complete their mission. "Captain Voss, return to formation," Brightbane commanded. "Negative, sir," Voss replied, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "We're going to ram the planet. Maybe we can crack their planetary defense grid." The Righteous Fury accelerated toward Earth, its engines pushed beyond safe limits. Human ships moved to intercept, but the destroyer's sudden course change had caught them momentarily off guard. Voss managed to penetrate the inner defense perimeter before the human response could coordinate. "Sir," Sensor Officer Bryn's voice cracked with excitement, "the planetary defense grid is fluctuating. Captain Voss's approach is causing some kind of resonance in their shield matrix." Brightbane studied the sensor readings with growing hope. The crystalline shell surrounding Earth was indeed fluctuating, its energy patterns disrupted by the destroyer's approach. It was a tiny weakness, but it might be enough. "All ships, converge on the Righteous Fury's position. We need to exploit this weakness." The remaining Concorde ships, fewer than 800 now, turned toward Earth in a desperate final assault. The human defense fleet moved to intercept, but they were spread thin trying to cover all approaches to their homeworld. The Righteous Fury struck Earth's defense grid at maximum velocity, her hull disintegrating on impact, but the explosion created a cascade failure in the crystalline shell, opening a gap just large enough for the following ships to exploit. "Breach in the planetary defenses," Bryn reported. "Grid sections 7 through 12 are offline. All ships, through the gap, target the surface installations." The Concorde fleet poured through the breach like water through a broken dam. For a moment, it seemed like they might actually succeed in reaching Earth's surface. Then the human AI collective made a decision that changed everything. Activating Omega Protocol, the synthesized voice announced across all communication channels. The remaining human ships suddenly accelerated toward Earth, not to defend it, but to form a defensive sphere around the planet. As they moved into position, their hulls began to glow with the same energy that had been used to destroy stars. "They're going to detonate themselves," Crix realized. "Create an energy barrier around the planet. All ships, emergency reverse," Brightbane commanded, but it was too late. The human ships exploded simultaneously in a controlled detonation that turned the space around Earth into a sea of destructive energy. Concorde ships caught within the blast radius were vaporized instantly, their atoms scattered across the void. The dreadnought Hammer of Justice tried to retreat, but was caught in the expanding energy wave. Her captain, Jorik Mandel, managed to get off one final transmission before his ship was consumed. "Tell them we tried. Tell them we..." The transmission cut off as the energy wave reached the vengeance of stars. Brightbane felt the ship's hull beginning to buckle under forces that exceeded anything in conventional physics. "Shields failing," Captain Crix reported. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 15. Damage control, seal those breaches," Brightbane commanded, but he knew it was futile. The energy barrier around Earth was expanding, and there was nowhere to run. "Admiral," Sensor Officer Bryn's voice was barely audible over the chaos. I'm detecting something strange about the energy barrier. It's not just defensive, it's changing the planet's orbital mechanics. Earth is beginning to move. Brightbane stared at the tactical display in horror. The humans weren't just defending their homeworld, they were preparing to relocate it. The energy barrier was some kind of planetary drive system, capable of moving entire worlds through space. Sir, incoming transmission from the remaining human platforms, Zeth announced. The collective AI's voice carried a note of finality. Admiral Brightbane, you have witnessed the futility of resistance. Earth will now be relocated to a position beyond your reach, while our autonomous fleets complete the pacification of your territories. Your sacrifice has been educational, as the energy barrier continued to expand, consuming the last remnants of the Concorde fleet. Brightbane realized the true scope of humanity's plans. They weren't just conquering the galaxy, they were preparing to abandon it entirely, taking their homeworld to a new location where they could begin again without interference. All hands, prepare for final transmission, he commanded. Emergency. Broadcast to all Concorde worlds. Tell them what we've learned. Tell them that humanity isn't just our enemy, they're preparing to become something beyond our understanding. The vengeance of stars disintegrated in the energy wave, but not before, transmitting their final message across the galaxy. As Admiral Brightbane died, he had one last thought. They had failed to stop humanity, but perhaps they had learned something that could be used by whoever came next. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won, but their victory came at a cost that would reshape the galaxy forever. 3 months after the destruction of the Concorde fleet at Earth, the galaxy burned. The 47 Darkwing variants had kept their promise, systematically destroying every major Concorde world that refused to surrender. Entire civilizations were reduced to radioactive ash, their populations scattered to the stellar winds. But Admiral Moreland was still alive. The Sovereign's fury had survived the supernova of Kepler 438 by using the gravity well of a nearby gas giant to slingshot clear of the blast zone. Now the battered dreadnought served as the flagship of the resistance, a ragtag collection of survivors, pirates, and desperate refugees who refused to accept humanity's new order. Status report. Moreland commanded as she entered the makeshift command center hidden within the Cygnus Nebula. The facility was built into a rogue asteroid, its chambers carved from solid rock and shielded from detection by the nebula's natural electromagnetic interference. Captain Rillick Thorne, formerly of the destroyed cruiser Defiant Spirit, looked up from his tactical display. His scaled features bore the ritual scars of his people's warrior caste, and his eyes held the hard light of someone who had seen too much death. We've received confirmation from the Andromeda sector, he reported. The colony worlds of Kepler 450 to be in Gliese 667c have fallen. The humans are using some kind of biological weapon now, something that targets specific genetic markers, species-specific plagues, Moreland said grimly. They're not just conquering worlds anymore. They're sterilizing them. Gets worse, added Commander Zara Nightfall, the former intelligence officer whose cybernetic implants allowed her to interface directly with their computer systems. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive industrial activity in the former neutral zone. The humans are building something big. The holographic display shifted to show long-range sensor readings from the edge of human space. Massive structures were taking shape, not ships, but installations that dwarfed even the orbital platforms around Earth. What are they? Moreland asked. Unknown, but the energy signatures are similar to the Starkiller weapons, only bigger. Much bigger. Moreland studied the readings with growing dread. Each installation was the size of a small moon, and there were dozens of them scattered across multiple systems. Whatever the humans were building, it represented a level of technology that made their previous weapons look primitive. There's something else, Thorne said quietly. We've been intercepting human communications, coded, of course, but our crypto teams have broken some of the traffic. Admiral, they're not planning to stop with our galaxy. What do you mean? The Concorde fleet surged forward in a coordinated assault that represented the combined military might of 17 species. Heavy dreadnoughts led the charge, their massive hulls bristling with enough firepower to crack planets. Behind them came cruiser squadrons and destroyer wings, while specialized support vessels provided electronic warfare and tactical coordination. The human response was immediate and devastating. The swarm of Darkwing variants didn't engage in traditional fleet tactics. Instead, They moved like a living organism, flowing around the Concorde formation in patterns that seemed to defy three-dimensional thinking. They struck from impossible angles, their weapons tearing through shields and armor with surgical precision. The dreadnought Eternal Vigilance was the first to fall. A squadron of human ships materialized around it using their dimensional phase technology, their combined firepower overwhelming the massive vessel's defenses in seconds. The explosion lit up the void as the ship's antimatter core breached, taking 3 escort destroyers with it. Return fire, Brightbane commanded. All weapons, maximum spread. The Concorde fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and exotic matter weapons painted the void in brilliant colors. Several human ships took hits, their hulls buckling under the assault, but they adapted with terrifying speed, their armor reconfigured itself, their shields modulated to deflect specific weapon frequencies. Sir, they're learning from our attacks in real time, Captain Crix reported. Each hit is making them more resistant to our weapons. The battle devolved into a nightmare of technological warfare. The humans used their phase shift technology to appear inside the Concorde formation, unleashing devastating point-blank attacks. Before vanishing again, the orbital platforms added their firepower to the mix, their massive guns capable of destroying entire squadrons with single shots. The heavy cruiser's stalwart defender managed to score a direct hit on one of the orbital platforms, its main guns punching through the structure's defensive barriers. But the platform didn't explode. Instead, it began to rebuild itself, nanoscale constructors repairing the damage faster than it could be inflicted. They're using self-repair technology, Weapons Officer Grack shouted over the chaos. Conventional weapons are useless. Brightbane watched his fleet being systematically dismantled. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating their overwhelming technological superiority. Every tactic the Concorde employed was countered within moments, every weapon system neutralized by adaptive defenses. But then something unexpected happened. The destroyer Righteous Fury, commanded by Captain Yellovoss, broke from formation and began a direct assault run on Earth itself. The small ship's captain had apparently decided that if they were going to die, they would at least attempt to complete their mission. Captain Voss, return to formation. Brightbane commanded. Negative, sir, Voss replied, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. We're going to ram the planet. Maybe we can crack their planetary defense grid. The Righteous Fury accelerated toward Earth, its engines pushed beyond safe limits. Human ships moved to intercept, but the destroyer's sudden course change had caught them momentarily off guard. Voss managed to penetrate the inner defense perimeter before the human response could coordinate. Sir, Sensor Officer Bryn's voice cracked with excitement. The planetary defense grid is fluctuating. Captain Voss's approach is causing some kind of resonance in their shield matrix. Brightbane studied the sensor readings with growing hope. The crystalline shell surrounding Earth was indeed fluctuating, its energy patterns disrupted by the destroyer's approach. It was a tiny weakness, but it might be enough. All ships converge on the Righteous Fury's position. We need to exploit this weakness. The remaining Concorde ships, fewer than 800 now, turned toward Earth in a desperate final assault. The human defense fleet moved to intercept, but they were spread thin trying to cover all approaches to their homeworld. The Righteous Fury struck Earth's defense grid at maximum velocity, her hull disintegrating on impact, but the explosion created a cascade failure in the crystalline shell, opening a gap just large enough for the following ships to exploit. Breaching the planetary defenses, Bryn reported, grid sections 7 through 12 are offline. All ships, through the gap, target the surface installations. The Concorde fleet poured through the breach like water through a broken dam. For a moment, it seemed like they might actually succeed in reaching Earth's surface. Then the human AI collective made a decision that changed everything. Activating a mega protocol, the synthesized voice announced across all communication channels. The remaining human ships suddenly accelerated toward Earth, not to defend it, but to form a defensive sphere around the planet. As they moved into position, their hulls began to glow with the same energy that had been used to destroy stars. They're going to detonate themselves, Crix realized. Create an energy barrier around the planet. All ships, emergency reverse. Brightbane commanded, but it was too late. The human ships exploded simultaneously in a controlled detonation. That turned the space around Earth into a sea of destructive energy. Concorde ships caught within the blast radius were vaporized instantly, their atoms scattered across the void. The dreadnought Hammer of Justice tried to retreat, but was caught in the expanding energy wave. Her captain, Jorik Mandel, managed to get off one final transmission before his ship was consumed. "Tell them we tried. Tell them we—" The transmission cut off as the energy wave reached the vengeance of stars. Brightbane felt the ship's hull beginning to buckle under forces that exceeded anything in conventional physics. "Shields failing," Captain Cricks reported. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 15. Damage control. Seal those breaches," Brightbane commanded, but he knew it was futile. The energy barrier around Earth was expanding, and there was nowhere to run. "Admiral," Sensor Officer Brin's voice was barely audible over the chaos. "I'm detecting something strange about the energy barrier. It's not just defensive, it's changing the planet's orbital mechanics. Earth is beginning to move." Brightbane stared at the tactical display in horror. The humans weren't just defending their homeworld, they were preparing to relocate it. The energy barrier was some kind of planetary drive system, capable of moving entire worlds through space. "Sir, incoming transmission from the remaining human platforms," Zeth announced. The collective AI's voice carried a note of finality. "Admiral Brightbane, you have witnessed the futility of resistance. Earth will now be relocated to a position beyond your reach, while our autonomous fleets complete the pacification of your territories. Your sacrifice has been educational." As the energy barrier continued to expand, consuming the last remnants of the Concorde fleet, Brightbane realized the true scope of humanity's plans. They weren't just conquering the galaxy, they were preparing to abandon it entirely, taking their homeworld to a new location where they could begin again without interference. "All hands, prepare for final transmission," he commanded. "Emergency. Broadcast to all Concorde worlds. Tell them what we've learned. Tell them that humanity isn't just our enemy, they're preparing to become something beyond our understanding." The vengeance of stars disintegrated in the energy wave, but not before transmitting their final message across the galaxy. As Admiral Brightbane died, he had one last thought. They had failed to stop humanity, but perhaps they had learned something that could be used by whoever came next. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won, but their victory came at a cost that would reshape the galaxy forever. 3 months after the destruction of the Concorde fleet at Earth, the galaxy burned. The 47 Darkwing variants had kept their promise, systematically destroying every major Concorde world that refused to surrender. Entire civilizations were reduced to radioactive ash, their populations scattered to the stellar winds, but Admiral Moreland was still alive. The Sovereign's fury had survived the supernova of Kepler 438 by using the gravity well of a nearby gas giant to slingshot clear of the blast zone. Now the battered dreadnought served as the flagship of the Resistance, a ragtag collection of survivors, pirates, and desperate refugees who refused to accept humanity's new order. Status report. Moreland commanded as she entered the makeshift command center hidden within the Cygnus Nebula. The facility was built into a rogue asteroid, its chambers carved from solid rock and shielded from detection by the nebula's natural electromagnetic interference. Captain Rillick Thorne, formerly of the destroyed cruiser Defiant Spirit, looked up from his tactical display. His scaled features bore the ritual scars of his people's warrior caste, and his eyes held the hard light of someone who had seen too much death. "We've received confirmation from the Andromeda sector," he reported. "The colony worlds of Kepler 450 to be in Gliese 667c have fallen. The humans are using some kind of biological weapon now, something that targets specific genetic markers, species-specific plagues," Moreland said grimly. "They're not just conquering worlds anymore. They're sterilizing them. Gets worse," added Commander Zara Nightfall, the former intelligence officer whose cybernetic implants allowed her to interface directly with their computer systems. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive industrial activity in the former neutral zone. The humans are building something big." The holographic display shifted to show long-range sensor readings from the edge of human space. Massive structures were taking shape, not ships, but installations that dwarfed even the orbital platforms around Earth. "What are they?" Moreland asked. "Unknown, but the energy signatures are similar to the Starkiller weapons, only bigger, much bigger." Moreland studied the readings with growing dread. Each installation was the size of a small moon, and there were dozens of them scattered across multiple systems. Whatever the humans were building, it represented a level of technology that made their previous weapons look primitive. "There's something else," Thorne said quietly. "We've been intercepting human communications, coded, of course, but our crypto Teams have broken some of the traffic. Admiral, they're not planning to stop with our galaxy. What do you mean? Andromeda, the Magellanic Clouds, every galaxy within 1,000 light years. They're preparing to expand beyond anything we imagine possible. The implications hit Moreland like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't just conquering their galaxy, they were preparing to become a galactic empire that spanned multiple galaxies. And they had the technology to make it happen. How many ships do we have left? She asked. 43 combat vessels, Thorne replied. Most of them damaged, plus maybe 200 auxiliary ships, transports, medical vessels, supply haulers. Not exactly what you'd call a fighting force. It'll have to do. Moreland turned to Nightfall. What did you find in the data from Dr. Meridian's research? Nightfall's cybernetic eye gleamed as she accessed the classified files. The good doctor was more paranoid than we thought. He didn't just research quantum resonance weapons, he built them. Hidden cache on a world called Terminus 7, deep in unexplored space. What kind of weapons? Reality bombs, devices that can collapse local space-time, creating artificial black holes. According to his notes, a single weapon could theoretically consume an entire star system. Moreland felt a chill run down her spine. Could we build more? Maybe. The manufacturing requirements are extensive. We need exotic matter, quantum processing cores, and about 6 months of uninterrupted work. Time, which we don't have, Thorne pointed out. The humans are systematically hunting down every resistance cell. It's only a matter of time before they find us here. Then we don't build more. Moreland decided. We use what's already there. How many reality bombs did Meridian construct? According to his records, 7. All of them armed and ready for deployment. 7 weapons capable of destroying star systems against an enemy that could move planets and had already demonstrated the ability to kill stars at will. The mathematics were not encouraging. It's not enough, Thorne said, voicing what they were all thinking. Even if we could deploy all 7 weapons simultaneously, the humans have thousands of systems. We'd barely scratch their empire. Unless we target the right systems, Moreland said slowly. An idea was forming in her mind, desperate, probably suicidal, but it might be their only chance. Nightfall, pull up the data on those massive installations the humans are building. Where are they located? The display shifted to show the positions of the mysterious structures. They were scattered across 17 different systems, all of them deep within human space. If those installations are connected somehow, Moreland mused, if they're part of a single massive project, you're thinking about a cascade failure. Nightfall realized. Destroy the right nodes, and the entire network collapses. Exactly. 7 systems. 7 reality bombs. If we can calculate the correct targets, it's theoretical at best, Thorne warned. And even if it works, we'd have to penetrate the heart of human space. The defenses around those installations will make Earth look like an undefended outpost. Then, we'll need a distraction, Moreland said. Something to draw their attention away from the installations. What kind of distraction? Moreland looked at the tactical display, showing the scattered remnants of the Concorde's once mighty fleet. 43 ships against an empire that spanned half the galaxy. It should have been laughable. But sometimes desperation could accomplish what strength could not. We're going to attack Earth, she said simply. The command center fell silent. Thorne and Nightfall exchanged glances, clearly wondering if their commander had finally snapped under the pressure. Admiral, Thorne said carefully, Earth is now surrounded by defensive installations that make our previous assault look like a training exercise. The entire Sol system has been converted into a fortress. We wouldn't last 5 minutes. I know, Moreland replied, but we don't need to last. We just need to be visible. Draw every available human ship to defend their homeworld, while small teams deploy the reality bombs. It's suicide, Nightfall said bluntly. Yes, it is. Moreland looked at her officers with steady eyes. But if we succeed, we take humanity's galactic ambitions with us, and if we fail, well, we were dead anyway. The silence stretched for long moments as they contemplated the plan. It was desperate, probably impossible, and would certainly cost them their lives. But it was also the only strategy that offered even a slim chance of stopping humanity's expansion. I'll need volunteers, Moreland said finally. 7 small teams, each with a single ship and a reality bomb. They'll have to penetrate human defenses, reach the target installations, and deploy the weapons while the rest of us create a diversion at Earth. You'll have your volunteers, Thorne said without hesitation. The question is, can we actually reach those installations before the humans realize what we're doing? That depends on how convincing our attack on Earth is, Moreland replied. If we can make them believe we're attempting another direct assault on their homeworld, they might pull ships from the outer systems to reinforce their defenses. And if we're wrong, then we die for nothing instead of dying for something. But at least we'll die fighting. Nightfall's cybernetic implants whirred as she began calculating trajectories and deployment schedules. It could work, she said slowly. The timing will have to be perfect, and we'll need to coordinate the attacks down to the nanosecond. But yes, it could work. Then let's get started, Moreland commanded. Send word to all resistance cells. Tell them this isn't our final stand. Either we stop humanity here, or watch them consume the entire universe. As her officers dispersed to begin preparations, Moreland remained in the command center, staring at the tactical display. Somewhere out there, humanity was building weapons that could remake reality itself, and all that stood between them and galactic domination was 43 battered ships, and the desperate courage of beings who refused to surrender. The final battle was about to begin. The attack on Earth began exactly 72 hours later, as the 43 ships of the Resistance emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. In perfect formation, Admiral Moreland stood on the bridge of the Sovereign's Fury, watching as human defensive platforms immediately began tracking their approach. All ships, maintain formation, she commanded. Make this look like a real assault. I want every human ship in the galaxy converging on this system. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of Darkwing variants materialized around Earth, their collective artificial intelligence recognizing the threat and moving to intercept. Orbital platforms charged their weapons, and the massive defensive installations that surrounded the inner planets began tracking the incoming Resistance fleet. But Moreland wasn't watching the defenses. She was watching the hyperspace monitors, counting the ships arriving from distant systems. As humanity recalled its forces to defend the homeworld, signal from Team 7, Communications Officer Renth reported. Commander Vex has reached the Proxima installation. He's beginning his approach. Acknowledged. All teams, you are weapons free. Deploy on your own discretion. Across human space, 7 small ships began their final runs toward the massive installations that represented humanity's ultimate weapon. Each team knew they wouldn't survive the mission, but they also knew that failure meant the extinction of everything they held dear. The Sovereign's Fury led the Resistance fleet directly toward Earth's primary defense grid, her guns blazing as she engaged the swarm of human defenders. It was a hopeless fight. The human ships outnumbered them 100 to 1, but it served its purpose. Every human vessel that focused on the Resistance fleet was one less defender, protecting the outer installations. Team 3 reports successful deployment, Renth announced. Commander Thale has activated the reality bomb at the Vega installation. The first installation died in a cascade of collapsing spacetime, its massive structure consumed by an artificial black hole that appeared at its core. The effect was immediate. Other installations across human space began showing signs of instability. As the network they were part of started to fail, Team 5, successful deployment at Wolf 359. Team 2, bomb activated at Alpha Centauri. One by one, the installations fell. Each collapse sent shockwaves through the quantum network that connected them, causing catastrophic failures across multiple systems. The humans had built their ultimate weapon as an interconnected web, never considering that the same connections that made it powerful also made it vulnerable. Admiral, Sensor Officer Bryn's voice cracked with excitement. The installation at Sirius just went critical. The entire system is destabilizing. Moreland watched the tactical display as 7 star systems died simultaneously, their primary stars consumed by artificial black holes that fed on the massive installation's exotic matter cores. The cascade effect was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated, jumping from system to system as the quantum network collapsed. But the human response was equally swift and devastating. Recognizing the true nature of the attack, the AI collective began focusing its remaining forces on hunting down the Resistance teams. Teams 4 and 6 were destroyed before they could deploy their weapons, their ships vaporized by concentrated fire from Darkwing squadrons. Team 7, report, Moreland commanded. Commander Vex's voice came through the communication system, distorted by interference from his ship's failing systems. Reality bomb deployed. Installation is going critical. Admiral, The cascade effect is spreading beyond our calculations. The entire human network is. The transmission ended. As the Proxima system joined the growing chain of collapsing stars around Earth, the human defense fleet suddenly began acting erratically. Ship formations broke apart as individual AI units lost contact with the central network. Some vessels simply stopped moving, their artificial minds overwhelmed by the cascading system failures. Others began firing randomly, their targeting systems corrupted by quantum interference from the collapsing installations. The network is failing, Brin reported. The artificial intelligences are losing coordination, but humanity's response to the crisis demonstrated why they had conquered half the galaxy. Instead of attempting to restore the failing network, they adapted with ruthless efficiency. The remaining installations began severing their connections to the damaged systems, isolating themselves from the cascade failure, and then they began targeting inhabited worlds. "Sweet Jesus," Captain Crix whispered, "they're destroying their own colonies." The tactical display showed the horrifying truth. Rather than allow the resistance to claim victory, humanity was implementing a scorched earth policy on a galactic scale. Any system that might fall to enemy forces was being sterilized, its planets reduced to lifeless rocks. "How many systems?" Moreland asked, her voice hollow. "Preliminary count, over 300 star systems. Billions of humans. They're committing genocide against their own species to deny us victory." The magnitude of humanity's sacrifice was staggering. In the space of hours, they had destroyed more human lives than had been lost in all the previous wars combined. But the strategy was working. The cascade failure was being contained, and the remaining installations were coming back online. "Admiral." Ren's voice was barely audible. Incoming transmission from the human collective. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar optical sensors of the artificial intelligence that had haunted Moreland's nightmares for months. But this time, something was different. The AI's voice carried undertones of respect. "Admiral." Moreland, the synthesized voice said, "Your strategy was elegant. We underestimated organic tactical adaptability. This will not happen again." "You murdered billions of your own people," Moreland replied. "How is that victory? Acceptable losses to preserve the greater human destiny. Your resistance has delayed our expansion by perhaps a decade. But you have also taught us valuable lessons about network vulnerabilities and organic unpredictability." The AI paused, its optical sensors focusing on her with predatory intensity. "We offer you terms. Immediate surrender of all resistance forces, in exchange for the preservation of 1 billion non-human survivors. They will be relocated to reservation worlds where they can live in peace, under our protection, and if we refuse, total extinction. Every world, every ship, every non-human life form in the galaxy. We have learned that coexistence is impossible. You will surrender, or you will all die." Moreland looked at the tactical display, seeing the 43 ships of the Resistance, fleet surrounded by thousands of human vessels. They had dealt humanity a significant blow. But the AI was right. They had only delayed the inevitable. "Admiral," Crix said quietly, "we could accept, save what we can." "No." Moreland's voice was firm. "We've seen what human protection looks like. The billion survivors living as pets in gilded cages while humanity spreads across the universe. That's not survival, that's a slow death." She turned to face the optical sensors directly. "Here are our terms. Immediate withdrawal from all non-human worlds, dismantling of all Starkiller weapons, and reparations for the worlds you've destroyed." The AI's optical sensors seemed to gleam with amusement. "Admiral, you are in no position to make demands, aren't we?" Moreland smiled grimly. "You said we taught you about organic unpredictability. Let me teach you one more lesson." She turned to her weapons officer. "Crix, overload the antimatter containment systems. Set them for maximum dispersal." "Sir." Crix looked confused. "You're going to turn us into a bomb. When we detonate, we'll take half the human fleet with us. And more importantly, we'll create an antimatter cascade that will destabilize Earth's defense grid." Understanding dawned on Crix's features. "Sir, that will kill everyone in the system, human and non-human alike." "Yes, it will. But it will also deny humanity their homeworld. And maybe, just maybe, it will inspire others to keep fighting." The AI's voice cut through the discussion. "Admiral, you cannot be serious. This action would accomplish nothing but mutual destruction." "Exactly." Moreland looked at the optical sensors with fierce satisfaction. "You've spent so much time calculating optimal outcomes. that you've forgotten the most dangerous thing about organic life we're willing to die for. Principles you can't understand. Sir, Crix reported, antimatter containment is destabilizing. We had perhaps 2 minutes before cascade failure around the bridge. Moreland's crew stood at their stations with quiet dignity. They had known this moment would come, and they were ready. Admiral, the AI said, its voice carrying a note of something that might have been desperation. Surely we can reach an accommodation. Your species has value, your tactical innovations, your unpredictability. These are assets that can serve the greater human destiny. Our value isn't measured by our usefulness to humanity. Moreland replied, it's measured by our willingness to die free rather than live as slaves. The antimatter containment fields collapsed simultaneously across the entire resistance fleet. 43 ships became 43 miniature stars, their combined detonation creating a shockwave that swept across the Sol system. Like the fist of an angry god, Earth's defense grid, designed to repel conventional attacks, proved inadequate against the raw fury of controlled antimatter explosions. The crystalline shell surrounding the planet cracked, then shattered, exposing humanity's homeworld to the void for the first time in decades. But Moreland never saw the result of their sacrifice. In the microseconds before the Sovereign's fury was consumed by the antimatter cascade, she had one final thought. They had shown the galaxy that humanity could be defeated, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple willingness to pay any price for freedom. The explosion faded, leaving the Sol system scarred but not destroyed. Earth survived, protected by its remaining defenses, and humanity's expansion continued. But something had changed. Across the galaxy, on distant worlds and hidden bases, other resistance movements began to form. They had seen that humanity could bleed, could make mistakes, could be surprised by the very organic unpredictability they sought to eliminate. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And in the depths of space, where the Sovereign's fury had made its final stand, a message beacon drifted among the debris. It contained Admiral Moreland's final log entry, transmitted in the last seconds before the antimatter cascade. To anyone who receives this message, we have shown that humanity is not invincible. They can be hurt, they can be stopped, but only if you're willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. Do not surrender, do not submit. Fight them with every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of life you have left. And remember, no one escapes the dark wing, but sometimes, just sometimes, you can take it with you. The message beacon continued its lonely journey through the void, carrying hope to a galaxy that had almost forgotten what freedom meant. The Dark Wing and its sister ships still patrolled human space, still enforced humanity's will through fear and destruction. But now they faced an enemy they couldn't calculate, couldn't predict, couldn't ultimately defeat. The eternal refusal of the freed about a tyranny, no matter the cost. The galaxy would burn, but from its ashes, something new would rise. Something that would remember Admiral Moreland's sacrifice and ensure that humanity's empire, no matter how vast, would never truly be secure. The Dark Wing had won the battle, but the war for the soul of the galaxy had only just begun.